2022 December Brazil Mission by Chuck King, Frontier Harvest Ministries of Ford City, PA. I departed from Pittsburgh and got good seats all the way to Chicago and then to Panama City, Panama, and finally on my way to Manaus, Brazil. We waited a long time in immigration because they were very slow with agents. And you can see how hot it was all week, basically 90 degrees every day and very humid, very little rain. This is my hotel in Manaus, looking out my window across the city. We got the riverboat, the public boat, about 4 hours after we arrived, or rather we had 4 hours of sleep, and we went to the boat. Had to actually get on a second boat because this one was so full, but it gives you the idea what the boat was like, very similar. And here's Paulo. He's the pastor and the host that we stayed with for most of the time. Here's another look at the second boat that we actually rode on as we went down the River Negro, and it connects to the Amazon. And in about 2.5 hours ride on this boat, depending on the stops, we arrived at the little dock across from Paulo's house, and we had about a quarter-mile walk. You can see there, it's the dry season, so we had to walk more this time. We're in the house enjoying one of many meals. They feed us very well. That's Diogo on the left and Gerson on the right. We had a good meal here that first day, and every day they have even in between what they call coffees. That's frozen pineapples, delicious. And we got on the boat then for a 2-day stay, about an hour or more, maybe 2 hours total by 2 different boat rides out. Here's our boat and our driver. He's also a pastor. He rode us in his boat, and we ended up getting there at night. And finally, at the church meeting, we stayed in the pastor's house at the church. And you can see Gerson there sharing with the people. And Greg and I would preach each night, take about 45 minutes each, and we would preach, and Gerson would interpret, all of us preaching the Word of God. The people really responded. This is Diogo. He's a young man in his 20s who Gerson is training in the ministry, and he is a powerful worship leader and really a servant of God, and we enjoyed having him along very much. So the people would respond. Every time, everyone basically would respond to stand in response to the message, and Gerson would pray for them with some powerful prayer times. The next day, the brothers in the afternoon took all this equipment over probably almost a mile away, at least a half mile away, to an outdoor soccer field, and we had an evening service there. That night, they wanted more people to come from the community, and more did besides the church people. And again, we had our worship time, and Greg and I both preached, and the people had wonderful responses to the Word of God each night. And this night in particular, there was a very good response. And you can see Greg preaching there, and there were dogs running around, but the people were very focused, and Gerson is leading them in prayer after they made a commitment to change, to stand and pray with him. And so the music was really good because Diogo is a really good musician as well as a worship leader. I also preached. It began to rain a little bit, just for a few minutes, but it stopped. It was just sprinkles, and we had a chance to finish that meeting, and then we walked back to the pastor's house at the church. And the next day we took the small boat again through very narrow waterways, until we got to the place where we could actually cross the land again to get to the Amazon. From a narrow waterway that parallels the Amazon to the actual Amazon River, these pigs were just lying there enjoying the day. This is the boat dock. They had a meat shop there, and this gentleman was humorous. Greg had a good time with him. You can see how dirty the water is on the Amazon. We waited for the boat, and we got into our boat. That boat has a cover on it, that blue one, and he took us back to where we climbed the bank once again to where we walk across the cow pasture and the long walkways until we get to Paula's house. Now again, we went out in the evening and went to the next day and went to a church that was about 40 minutes away by the boat. You can see how steep this bank was, and we had trouble on those steps. But the second day they had built a railing that really helped us when we went up and down. They had worship time and praise time, and then Diogo led some songs in worship, and then we had our both preachers preach. I should say 3 preachers, because Jerison really preaches what we say, and the people there were so hungry for the word. They want us to come back. We both preached very strong messages. I preached about God's order in the home and the family, showing how the Word of God very clearly teaches the proper roles for men and women. The next day, this is the next day at the beginning, we went back to the same place, and Jerison had a nice teaching on the chlorine generators. You can see he had 11 different sets of equipment there, and this was before the service, and we in fact had boat trouble and got there late because there was a hole in the fuel line that was sucking air and causing the boat not to run. But they got tape put around that, and we proceeded on our way. Jerison and Diogo are showing them how to use the chlorine generator. Made very strong chlorine, this power box that they've developed there in Brazil that comes from a computer power box. Makes very good chlorine. It plugs into the wall and brings the electricity down to 12 volts. It's a converter, and then we showed them how to make the solution, how much to put in a bucket of their river water, and we had 10 capfuls in it. It was too strong, actually, so the water was not quite as bad as other rivers, and we ended up going with 5. That actually made it slightly too strong, but we told them to just use 5 capfuls of chlorine in a 20-liter bucket of their water all the time without testing. These 11 received the equipment, agreeing to take care of the equipment, reach 300 families, and to earn about 50 cents a bottle to the people that use the chlorine. So then we started the service, had our worship time again, and Greg and I preached again, and the people, as always, responded powerfully. And we had great times of prayer with them through Jerison, and his voice was going. So Paulo prayed after my message with the people. We had extra singing and songs and worship. And this is Paulo leading them in a powerful prayer for the families. He had them stand together as families and pray for their family to come together. So then we ended up getting back to the house, and next morning I was to leave, and I left about 10 o'clock for the boat dock. Paulo's son, Paulo, went with me to get me on the boat to take me to my hotel, and even came back at midnight to take me by Uber to the airport so I would be on my way home. We had safe water and chicken projects. I left another $1,000 for new chicken microloans. We trained those teams, 11 different people, to use chlorine generators. And we also had 4 nights of preaching ministry.